Thanks for joining, everybody. It's going to be a fairly large one today because we're going to try something. No, the usual is show and tell. The way around this is going to be tell and then show. We're going to take the plunge with a live demo, which I'll get into some detail of later on. But the overall topic for today is basically an intro into the planting planning tools that we've been working on and how we think that they can help with collaboration across multiple people working within the restoration space to mean that it all goes better. Usual ground rules apply, like this is recorded, we've muted your microphone, use the Q&A function if you want to ask a question, ask questions, and if I don't answer it, then we'll try and follow up with an answer later on. I won't go through that. So basically, the premise of all of this is that I didn't want to say that we were going to achieve restoration through coordination because there's already lots of restoration that's happening and people are doing lots of coordination and there's many people that are working really well together in this space. But we think that you could get more restoration if you had stronger coordination. So I presented some bits of this last week at a seminar at Lincoln. Apologies if you're joining this twice, you're going to hear some bits again. But as I was saying there, this is sort of how lazy I am with my stock imagery creation. I no longer look for photos of farms. I look for a farm that I like the look of in our mapping tools and then turn on the aerial imagery layer and zoom into it to sort of view a bit that sort of gives the message that I want to give. But the point was that this farm here, I can't even remember exactly where it was, but I think many people who are looking at this and they're in the space of trying to encourage mosaic farming methods and optimization of land use and all this kind of thing would say this is an example of what good looks like. Like it's still a productive farm. There's lots of pastures there, but a lot of the steep slopes are regenerating to various degrees. Most of this riparian area has been retired and is sort of in native bush. There's good stock exclusion. The landslides and stuff. There's sort of some forestry on the hills. So we do know what good looks like, and there are lots of examples of good happening. And we know that if we achieve all of this, then we not only can potentially get removals that, I mean, we have to massively reduce gross emissions as well, as always, but we might be able to get removals to the point that we could even become net negative, which is what we need to be, like 422 parts per million of CO2 is not a good place to be. And we also get all of these other benefits like improved water quality, climate resilience, biodiversity, revenue diversification. And given that pretty much like nobody thinks that this is a bad idea, really. I mean, there's probably some exceptions to this rule, but in general, everyone would go, yes, love that, give me more of that, I want to see this happen. Yet we're still having these sort of ongoing discussions of why is it not happening enough? So there's sort of two bits to it. It's like, why is it still so hard and why is it still so slow? Are almost the mirrors of each other. They amount to the same thing. Like it's not that it's impossible because it is happening, but it could certainly happen faster if it was easier. Part of the reason that it's so slow is that if you're an individual landholder who is looking at doing all of this stuff, there's a lot of things that get in your way. Like it can be very expensive. It involves a change to the status quo in land management. It can be quite disruptive for your ongoing practices. I mean, it's these last three, I think, which are, well, the first three are a lot easier with support, but especially the last three. If you're sort of feeling a little bit like you're doing this independently, there's a lot more risk and a lot more uncertainty and a lot of isolation. And what was like, let's say, for example, you have an erosion prone slope and you're looking at doing a mixed retirement of that slope with some combination of native and exotic plantings. If you're actively engaged with your catchment group and your neighbors and you're all working with the same plan and you're working with some advisors and some funding agencies, the chances of this being sort of viewed as a negative activity that's just like awful carbon farming gone wrong, etc., are very low. But if you're sort of off doing it by yourself and you're not collaborating with anybody and it's not clear what the grander vision is that you're working towards, you can feel like it's quite hard just to even feel like you're doing the right thing because you get none of this feedback. So being isolated sucks. And going it alone is hard. Going it together with lots of other people, I put easy, but it's actually just easier. It's still quite hard, but it's a lot easier than it is otherwise. But the challenge is that if you want to coordinate to go together, like the nice thing about going solo is that you're the one who gets to make all of the decisions. You don't have to arrange anything with anybody else. You don't have to send anything to anybody else. You can move quickly, and collaborating can be quite inefficient. So the head of marketing made the comment that the inclusion of this cartoon is really kind of dating me and the whole presentation, but those of you who recognize this, congratulations, you're in my generation. This is Captain Planet. And the point is that much like raising children, it takes a village to do restoration really well. And so I wanted to give you a quick perspective of what that village looks like, because it's more than just the stakeholders you might consider at first blush. So there's landowners, certainly. It's pretty hard to plant a forest without having land to plant it on, or to restore some forest or protect some forest. Landholders are a pretty key stakeholder. There's also developers who are really important to landholders for some of these risk mitigation activities. They can be a source of expertise, of funds. They can reduce the risks of marketplaces and other things. There's the financiers who, if you're not paying out of this from your own pocket, you're going to need to get money from somewhere else. That's just as true for developers as for landowners individually. Catchment groups, we've found, have a very major role to play in sort of alignment and engagement and advocacy and support. Primary sector suppliers, this whole restoration picture is hugely interesting to them because it's part of their social license, and it's also part of the sustainability of their general activities within the space. This is also true for processors, arguably even more so, to the extent that they care about the environmental impact of their activities, which is to say a lot. What happens before it gets to their processing site is probably the most significant part of the whole picture. So they care very much about enabling and encouraging these sort of restorative agriculture, sustainable agriculture activities. My animations just stopped working. Field services are a huge part. So these are, even if we just consider planting, it might be the people who do the initial site preparation and scrub clearance, the people who do the pre-planting weed control, the people who do the pre-planting pest control, the people who do the ongoing pest control and weed control and the actual planting itself, and the post-planting care, the fencing. Upstream of all of this, there's nurseries. Plants don't just appear out of thin air, unfortunately. They have to actually, the lead times can be years for some native species. A lot of this involves specialist expertise. Landholders might not have all of this themselves, neither might developers or financiers. You tend to need consultants in both the agricultural and forestry sectors. And there's also a huge space of various non-governmental organisations, especially in the environmental sector, who are interested in enabling and supporting and advocating for these activities. They've all got a role to play. Regional government has a major role to play. They can set land use constraints, set land use incentives, and they're interested in optimal land use outcomes for all of the constituents within the region. And then sort of at the central government level, there's also a huge role, but especially with the regulators, who for New Zealand and for the biggest incentive for forestry at the moment really is the ETS. This is a regulated market. The rules are set by centralised regulators, and the rules that they set change the picture for all of these different stakeholders. And ideally, all of this is like a beautiful cycle of collaboration and information sharing and cooperation, but even when everybody does want the same thing, that's not easy to achieve, because this also happens across multiple phases. And you'll be grateful that I haven't animated all of these out, but most projects that you're going to do are going to touch on most of these points. You have to figure out what you even want to do in the first place. Like, what are your objectives? Then analyze your options, do some sort of planning and scenario development, figure out whatever compliance constraints might exist, like can you even do what you want to do? Engage with a whole heap of different parties who might be required to make the project happen, work through some procurement stages, then actually implement it, figure out how you're going to get financing, figure out how you're going to monetize it to pay for the financing, do ongoing management, and then ultimately probably reporting. And for any non-trivial scale of project, and especially a regional activity, this is cyclical. You don't just make one big plan and do everything. You're continually repeating these phases year after year after year as you gradually roll everything out. And this is also happening at multiple different scales, because if you're a landholder, you might be thinking in terms of the sort of the small wetland planting that you want. And just for clarification, if you're planting 0.71 hectares, that's 7,100 square meters. That is not small if you have to plant the trees yourself. So at the local level, this is actually quite a bit of work potentially. But this is sort of your lens, and then that's only a little part of your whole farm though. Like at the farm level, there's probably a whole heap of activities that you're planning on implementing in stages over time as you can afford it, and depending on your general farm land use objectives. But at the catchment level, your farm is really just sort of one dot amongst many, which might be various outcomes on your farm, support and align with ambitions of the broader catchment stakeholders and all of these other sort of ecosystem providers, like a nursery cares about every one of their customers and also the portfolio of their customers and the overall demand for seedlings, not just this year, but the next year and the year after. And so when you put all of these things together, you get to meet the maelstrom, which is basically all of this happening all of the time, simultaneously across all groups. And this is a bastardization of a cartoon from XKCD, which I've referenced there, but it was talking about like how the whole internet kind of is balanced on these tiniest little pieces, which just sort of have their tendrils all through everything. And in the space of forest restoration, it just made me think of it because it often feels that the whole complicated process of across all of these different groups of delivering restoration processes and projects is just balanced on top of like spreadsheets and Word and Google documents and emails that get sent back and forth, and then shape files which are sent around according to various different schemas. And these get sprinkled all through this whole process liberally over time and in changing versions and changing standards. And it makes it pretty hard to be one of these individuals within the system and collaborate efficiently and make everything happen as quickly as it could be. So the general argument here is that restoration is at least in significant part coordination constrained. It's like there's other constraints as well, capacity and money, but coordination is a big part of it, and coordination is an area where better tools can help. So we've been trying to build some of these better tools, and we really want part of the CarbonCrop solution to sit in substitution for at least some of the activities for part of the stack to make things easier for all of these different groups to run through these stages. And I mean, this is a look at a customer who we're working with on the east coast of the North Island. This is sort of a decent sized catchment scale. This covers about 120,000 hectares. And so across this scale, you want to be working, you want to know where you are, regardless of which one of these stakeholders you are. Like, where are you at with your farm? Where are you at with your region? Where are you at with your next year's seedling supply? You also want to know where you're going, because if you just stay where you are, then we haven't actually achieved anything. There's been no impact. The goal is to decide on some way in which you want the future to be different to what it is now, and then chart out a path to how you're going to get there. And you want to know this at every scale, like right from the individual tree, because at some point it has to get in the ground somehow, whether it's been naturally seeded or it's been planted by someone, up to the stand of trees that you're looking at putting out for your wetland, up to your farm, up to your sub-catchment, up to your catchment group, up to the whole nation. And you want to do this at every stage of the project, because it's like at the same time as you're planting one lot of trees, you should be thinking about the trees that you're going to be planting the year after and the year after that, and the pest control activities that need to happen, and who should be involved in contributing to this. And you need to think about this from every angle. So the different contributors and stakeholders, they care about different things and they care about them at different times. And so this is, you want all of this ideally to be continuously updated as you collaborate with these various different groups and as you plan and implement these projects. And ideally you want all of this to happen in real time, because there's nothing that kind of paralyzes action like waiting for or losing something or losing track of a task that had to happen. So dreams are free. The question is, does this all work? Obviously, we haven't built every single part of this perfectly yet, but we've built quite a bit of it, and this is what we're going to gamble on doing a live demo with. So bear with me for a moment while I try and shuffle my screens around to switch to demo view. Is this still showing? I've got my audience, the other panel nodding. Sweet. Right. So this here is a demonstration catchment. I'll start over in the map view of the catchment, so that it actually covers quite a bit of New Zealand, but the first thing we can take a quick look at is the ability to filter by an area of interest, which is a pretty important bit. So we're talking about Wainui, which is a part of this catchment I was talking about. So these are all of the sites as we've defined them within the Wainui region. And what you can see about the Wainui region is that it's not easy farmland. If we look at the highly erodible land within this area, so this is stuff that's defined as high landslide risk with delivery to stream or not, severe earthflow risk, moderate earthflow risk, or gully risk. You can see the map's kind of lighting up with a lot of the unvegetated areas are very prone to this issue. Similarly, if we look at the land use capability classifications, there is not a lot here that we're seeing in sort of the nice, easy, I mean, I can basically turn off all of LUC 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you see there's only a tiny bit of the maps disappeared. If I toggle LUC 6 on and off, a lot of this area is LUC 6, and a lot more of it's LUC 7. So this is pretty hard farming country, and like there's still a lot of great farming going on there, but it's not easy land to deal with. But you can sort of flick these layers on and off, and you start to feel like you're getting a sense of the land, but it's not really a sense in a number. You might get a vibe, like, oh, it feels pretty orangey to me, man. I don't know. This is going to be a tough one. But what we wanted to do was turn this into some numbers. I'm constantly paranoid that I'm going to be showing a slide that's not the right one. We're now looking at a numbers graph, hopefully. And again, we're filtering down to Wainui. So these are the individual sites that are within Wainui, and what we can immediately tell. So this is with fully automated. Nobody has done any work on this yet. We've sort of reset it to the original state. We know that the Wainui subcatchment or catchment has 31 sites, which meet the definition we're using of a certain sort of minimum size, covering a total of 16,500 hectares. A very small fraction of this is currently forest, and most of it is exotic forest. Almost 50% of the land is considered highly erodible in some form or another, and we can see that almost all of the land is LUC 6 and LUC 7, as we were looking at before. And we can also see here that nothing that we currently know about, I have to get my piece of paper because there's so many points I have to make through this. There's nothing that we currently know is scheduled to happen that will change any of these numbers. Like what we have now and what we see now here on the forest cover, that's still what we're going to have in 2027. It's still what we're going to have in 2030. Similarly, the highly erodible land cover, we're still going to have just as much highly erodible land in 2027 and 2030. Is that showing okay, Abby, or is it sort of cropped to the wrong amount of the screen?
It's looking okay for now.
Okay, I'll keep running with this then. So we want to start changing this. Like we don't want to keep the land as it is today. We want to do some sort of land use transition and optimization, at least in some cases. It's very easy to, sorry, I'm jumping back and forward, come back here and kind of go like, okay, well, we want to increase our highly erodible land cover to 20% of that. We want to transition that to forest by 2030. But you can have a target like that, but for the target to actually be achieved, it needs to involve individual or groups of landholders on their farms making decisions that are right for them and their situation. They're not just going to go, oh, cool, well, whatever the regional government or the catchment group does, like, your wish is my command. They need to think about what's right for their land and align that with their land use objectives. And the nice thing is that these generally align pretty well. So it can work, but it's not just going to happen without anybody talking about it. So what we've done is, one of the ways you can use these tools is kind of figure out who the leading ones are going to be. Like, who do you really want to try and get on board to move the needle on these objectives at the regional level? So you can see that a bunch of these little tags here, I've picked some of the big ones and put in Lighthouse. So these are our farms that we think are going to be the early movers. We can very quickly filter that down, and we realize that now rather than 31 farms, we're talking about 9 farms, 9 groups of people we need to sort of initially engage with and get moving. And we're still covering roughly 65% of the total area. Like, we're at 16,000 hectares before, just these 9 cover 11,000. And they're also fairly representative in the issues. Like, we're still seeing forest cover around about 20%, and almost 50% of this land is highly erodible, which isn't surprising given that we're still looking at 70-odd% of the total area we were looking at before. Right, and what we've done is gone out and actually identified every single one of these farmers and bribed them to join the webinar today to help. Actually, no, it's a lie. What we've done is each person a couple of the people within the CarbonCrop team, they're standing in today. So we don't know these farms. Everything we say about these farms is entirely conjecture. This is not to say that what we're going to show you is the right land uses for these farms. It's just an example of how the platform could be used for sort of multi-scale collaboration to try and line up the dots. So I'm going to jump across. Everybody put on your best CarbonCrop smiles. This is why is it Gemini's yelling at me? This is a bunch of the team. You've got a mixture of our engineering, accounts team, marketing all here, and me obviously chatting there. They've each adopted a farm, and over the next 10 minutes, Oh, we're running roughly on time. We're going to try and do this in 10 minutes. Basically, this is the 10 minutes crash restoration program. It's going to be a little bit messy and rough. We're not saying it's a good idea to try and plan the future land use of your farm in 10 minutes. That would be a terrible idea. But it's to show you how quickly you can sort of start to get a picture of how things might look differently. So I'll go away so they stop needing to all put on their best smiles. But each of the, if I just quickly jump into a couple of these, so you don't feel like I'm hiding anything. So this is the farm that I'm going to be taking on. I got one with plenty of erodible land, but you can see that there's all of it's just automatically mapped at the moment. There's nothing in there that's been drawn in. And if I just quickly cherry pick a couple of the others, like this one, which we'll come back and have a look at in more detail later. Again, this is all just as it came out of the machine. And again, sorry, I'll move you guys out of the screen so you're not feeling quite so in the. This one also just as it came out of the box. There's a lot of forestry on this one already, which the system's picked up. But yeah, we haven't prepared this earlier, is basically what I'm saying. And I should briefly say, so I've picked up this farm CCPW 14927. I can use these same tools to look very quickly at that. Was it 14927? Yeah, like this is the same data for the farm. Like as you can see, it's sort of 65-ish% highly erodible land, though a lot of that's just moderate earth flow risk, which is a little bit different. Very low forest cover, very large amount of LUC 6 and 7. And I haven't made any plans yet. So this is what we're going to sort of see evolve. So, all right, back to our lighthouse view of things. What we're going to show you is how this planning can lead to sort of a new plan that has some costs and has a change in the highly erodible land and has a planning of the forestry activity at various different scales, and it can all be sort of coordinated and audited. So without further ado, everybody on your marks, get set, go, and we'll map some farms. And I'm going to set myself a timer, and I'll check in after 3 minutes and 2 minutes, and we'll see how it's evolving, just so that I don't get too caught in my own little waffle. So, right, this is my farm, and the thing that I want to do is make good land use transitions for my farm that, in particular, address some of the risks around landslide risk with delivery to stream that I have on my farm. So I can see where my streams are. I mean, it's my farm, so I'll have a pretty good idea anyway, but one of my stakeholders I'm working with might not. And I can also see where all of my highly erodible land is. And I skipped past this pretty quickly before, but these high landslide risk areas with delivery to stream, these are some of the worst from a water quality perspective and also a land stability perspective, because it's stuff that probably is going to trigger landslides or have landslides. You can see along these slopes. And when it does, it probably goes into a waterway, which means you just get loads of sediment. So I'm going to start by putting in along this area here a bit of planting to try and sort of retire some of this land and get it back into sort of something that's less prone to fall into the thing. And I'm going to say that I'm going to try and do this in 2026. A bit late for me to plan it this year. I'm going to put in this, we can specify arbitrary combinations of species and planting methodology and everything else. And I'm going to, this methodology I happen to know costs $3,000 per hectare, and that involves 1,500 plants per hectare. So you can immediately see the system's now calculated how many plants you need for this region and what the total establishment cost is based on the assumptions that you have. And has my timer gone off yet? No, I've still got 23 seconds. I've also found that actually this aerial imagery is a little bit out of date. A year or so ago, I was super worried about, where's the area? Oh, it's up here. Yeah, I actually planted out this hill, and I did it back in 2024. So this forest is actually, I did that all in the same mix as what I'm doing now. And it's planted. And that cost me 2,800 a hectare then, and I've allowed a little bit for inflation. And now that was my timer just going off there. Oh, sorry, and this one here, I'm not actually sure about this yet. I'm going to set it as draft. It's not yet forest that I know I'm going to plant. I like the idea, but I haven't got finance organized yet. It's still a bit of an unknown. So you've just seen me doing this. While I've been doing this, hopefully everybody else has also been diligently planting. So we now have planting planned right through to 2031. Establishment costs estimated. There's a spendy chunk in 2026 from somewhere. And you can see we're beginning to we've made quite a lot of progress already towards our 20% highly erodible land and forest cover target. So freeze that in your mind. We're already well underway, 700 hectares of cumulative total forest area planned. We'll do a little bit more on my own wee block because I've only got a 2024. I'm talking too much, so it goes slowly. 2024 planting, 2026 planting, and 2027. I think I want to do a little bit over in this next valley, which is also extremely highly erodible. You can see that this the tooling is auto snapping to the boundaries, so it makes it a lot quicker to set some of the stuff up. We'll put that again in the same species mix. This one, it's actually a bit further, but I've already confirmed it because I've got an agreement in place for the planting of this area. Same establishment cost. And I also I'm particularly concerned about some of these these areas along the coast here where it's not such a huge area, but it's like part of the farm that's particularly exposed to erosion. And I want to, for these areas, I'm not actually going to put them in exotics or even that exotic mix. I'm going to try and plant this up in a native mixed planting, which we're calling the ocean hillside mix. It's quite a bit more expensive. And again, these figures are just speculative. Don't expect that you can necessarily get the forest in the ground for this amount of money. It would depend a lot on the species and the situation and the methodology. But we'll put that in 2028. And again, this one's just at draft stage. And sorry, that's native future forest. And then I'm gonna quickly check in again, just so that you can see that things are still kind of evolving. We're now up to almost 1,000 hectares planned, and we're getting. Oh, that's interesting. There's some earlier forest that's appeared, pushing us much. We must have missed some forest in the past. It's sort of much closer to the maximum threshold number. We're past our 20% now. Basically, what this is saying is that somebody has identified forest that our system has missed, and it's got a larger area. So we'll check on that in a wee bit. And then I'm going to come back and sort of see where I'm at. Are there any other big areas that are highly erodible, which I might want to think about? Unfortunately, there's still lots. I'll add in one more block for this forest over here. Kind of like, and I mean, this is approximate. If you're the landholder, you're going to know the farm better than I do, and you're going to decide where it actually makes sense to put this stuff and where your fences are and similar. But again, you can see that all of the existing forested areas are not being included in the total planting required because we're not saying we're going to get rid of the existing forest. We're again going to go for the we'll try the expensive option. There's probably things we can do that are smart to make it cheaper and say that this is again like 5,000 a hectare, 2,000 stems. And if you're looking at this and going, oh my God, this looks painful to have to type this in every time, like we hear you, there's another feature in the works for this, which we'll demo another time. And I'll say again that this one is draft. And because I'm missing, I don't think I've actually got any forest planned for this year. I will put some in over on this slope here, basically just filling in all this highly erodible area above the big river. That's on my 2025 to-do list. So I'm going to do that in the same mix as before. 2025, $3,000, and it's confirmed as well at 1,500 stems a hectare. Oh. All right, now that's us done with the farm for the moment. We'll go back and see how this is all played out at sort of the broader, our regional level of planting initiative. So we're up to somewhere around 1,200 hectares of total aggregate forest planned at the moment. This is across 9 sites. Every site has some combination of either planted forest or confirmed forest. No site is in a situation where it only has draft forest, but you can see that in the projections ahead, a lot of these plans that we have are currently just drafts. And how you use these status conventions is totally up to you. It's easy for us to add additional statuses, and we very much expect to over time. But the way that we're working with some partners at the moment is planted means it's literally in the ground. It's very weird if you see planted forest in the future because it suggests that someone's got a bit confused about something or has a time machine. Um, but confirmed forest means that it hasn't been planted yet, but there's a concrete plan in place to get it planted. Like you've got financing in place, you've got a supply agreement with seedlings or a planting contract where you've contacted with a developer. And draft is you're kind of just trying out the idea. You might even, as the landholder, not be convinced that it's the right way to go, but it's a possibility that you're exploring. And if you're sort of working at a regional level and you're trying to get these broader land use changes, you're trying to sort of see how much of your impact is actually a concrete plan versus something that you're just kind of trying out. And so of the total area that we have here, we're talking about 1,200 hectares to plant, only 397 of that, sorry, 744 is just draft, 397 is confirmed. And you can see most of this planting, like we're in a catchment group that has a lot of LUC 6 and 7 land, so no surprise that most of the planting is intended on LUC 6 and 7. And also, a lot of this planting is happening on highly erodible areas of land. So if we look at how the highly erodible land is going to look, I see the mystery historic forest has disappeared again now. It must have been an error. We're up to 20% by 2030. So we've reduced our highly erodible land cover by roughly, or rather our unvegetated highly erodible land cover by roughly 20%. I can see what this means in the context of my farm alone, if I'm a landholder looking at this. So we'll go back to you can also see that all of these people have started as these landholders have sort of adopted their land and begun to make it their own, they've started adding names to it, although only in a couple of cases because everybody's been too busy furiously drawing trees, I think. But Charlie is now the proud proprietor of the bog. Abby has Slippery Slope Station, aptly named, no doubt. I forgot to give mine a name, but you can certainly personalize these, and this is visible across multiple groups, so they stop being just these anonymous numbers. But if I go 14927, which is my farm, 14927, you can start to see this plan that I was just walking through creating with you. Like the 2024 forest that wasn't identified is indeed now planted. There's 8.3 hectares that I've got confirmed for this year. And then next year, these bigger blocks in sort of various stages. But it means that as a landholder as well, you get a continually evolving visual depiction of how all of this is going to play out. And let's say, for example, that jumping back, that my plan isn't going to make it for, like, I go to this forest and look, 2026, I haven't been able to get the finances in place. I haven't been able to get the agreements in place. This is going to slip out to 2027. Like, it's a shame. I wish I could do it next year, but fingers crossed here. Haha, it worked. Of course it worked. Now all of this forest you've got an updated picture immediately across every single person involved in this project. No, that plan has changed. This is no longer going to happen in 2026. It's now happening in 2027, which means that everybody can adapt, or people who knew that they were not going to be able to finance projects in 2026 but can finance projects in 2027 can suddenly come and engage and say, hey, I saw your forest was delayed. Are you still interested in talking? Alrighty. The other thing I wanted to show, let me check my list. We can see what the cost implications of all of this are at the farm level. If I filter this down to future forests in both categories. So I'm planning on an aggregate planting 121 hectares across my farm, and it's not cheap. Like, it comes in two big hits in 2027 and 2029. And you can see it takes a while before this starts to actually pay itself off, but it will over time with the assumptions that we have in place here. You can also see just how much of my total 121 hectares is going onto highly erodible land with landslide risk delivery to stream. Like, all of this, 22 hectares is going onto land that's not highly erodible at all, and the rest of it is very landslide prone. You can see what the mixture of native and exotic planting I have is, and you can see what the sequestration is that this is going to achieve over time, and how much of it's on LUC 6 and 7 land, which is going to be very important with these LUC ETS restrictions that are coming up. So that's just for my farm. We can also see what this might be at the region level perspective. So now we're looking at all the lighthouse farms, 9 of them. We've got 1,200 hectares of forest being planted. The cash flow here is a little bit more evenly distributed because it's diversified across this portfolio, but it's starting to look even more like something that's going to pay itself back over time. And at the site level, we can give all sorts of details of returns on investment and internal rates of return and net present values. Again, almost all of this planting is on LUC 6 and level 7 land. The majority of it is on highly erodible land. And across the portfolio, we've actually got slightly more native than exotic, which is part of the reason it's so expensive, though. Again, these numbers are not set in stone, and you're actually doing quite well under some methodologies to plant natives at these costs. Let me check my list. There was one other thing I wanted to show. If we're looking here at the capital required, so establishment costs, I lied, actually, it's not just one more thing. This is the establishment costs that are expected for the portfolio, sorry, for the combination of plantings for the year. But if we limit it just to the stuff where it's actually confirmed, you see that it's now filtered down to just the confirmed plantings. This is sort of much more moderate sums. The rest of it's sort of projects that are still not quite at that stage. And we're still mostly in LUC 6 and 7 land. There was one other thing I wanted to show. Oh, that's right. Tracking of actual delivery. So this was the one that that was 2024. This is 2025 over here. So at the moment, this is showing as confirmed. And if we come back to this picture and we look, we're sort of wondering how the year is going. We want to see just what's happening in 2025. So there's 2 sites in 2025 with confirmed planting. Did I limit it to confirmed, or it's just everything in 20? No, it's across all status. They're all confirmed, totaling 48 hectares. And at the moment, it's all just confirmed. It's not planted now. Over the course of the year, we would like to see progress on this target. And so let's say that we sort of fast forward to, I'm planning on doing this planting in sort of August, September. That happens, and I now change it to planted. And we come back here and we refresh. We can not see that it changed to planted. That's disappointing. Why did that not work? Am I actually looking at the right site? Right. I think it's because of the planning. So this is my 8.3 hectares in 2025. So we've got it working now. We go back to 2025. We'll say that it's not just my farm, it's all of the Lighthouse farms. And you'll see that before, just to show that I'm not making this up, when we had this as confirmed, I think now it's trying to catch up with itself. There's a couple of delays just in propagation. It sort of takes 10 or so seconds. It's not pure real time, but this what was confirmed forest, oh yeah, there we go, is now going to become planted forest. And so we will see that this here increases by the amount that we just planted. And so this is sort of a sign to the people who are involved in this area of your plans that you had confirmed for this year. How are you tracking? How far through it all have you gone? All right. That was a bit of a marathon. I think I'm through the list, but so this is really just a snapshot of the features. Also, I should add a note on permissions. Here we've set everything wide open so that everyone can see everything. You do not have to do it that way. Like, you can share the amount of this data that it makes sense to share between parties and within parties in an appropriate context. And we're happy to work with groups on what they think might be appropriate in a certain situation. And now I have to find out how to get back to my panel to work through. Oh yeah, back to the slides. Back to the slides. So the live demo gamble worked, with the exception of me getting confused at the end there. You can wave goodbye to all of the team who are waving in the other view. Good job, farmers. Thanks very much for all of your input. Thanks for making it work. I would just want to kind of close off. So the goal that we have is that all of these groups are using the system to collaborate efficiently, but we're also very conscious that that is not the whole picture. We are a little part of a broader network. We don't run nurseries. We're not forestry consultants. Well, that's not strictly true. We are in a certain context, but we're not the only forestry consultants. We really want this to be a part of the puzzle, and we're enabling collaboration between all of these other groups more efficiently with this tooling. We think that if we do this well, then we'll get more action. The economics will improve. Almost all of this stuff has a return on scale, where the more you do of it, the bigger it gets, the cheaper it gets to do. And if we do that well, then we get all of this other stuff that we were talking about before, which has numerous benefits and everybody more or less wants. That was a bit of a marathon. Thank you very much to all of those who joined and listened. Really appreciate your interest. And if you're in a position where you think that you could use some of the tools that we shared today to make a difference, or you think that you could contribute to the expansion of these tools to help address your use cases, please get in touch. We've got a huge amount more in the pipeline with the stuff for sort of future forest planning and financing, and we'll be sharing more details as that sort of comes to availability. But for now, that's where we're at. So thanks so much for all your time, everybody, and appreciate your interest.